Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Church of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarCrest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 307 and we're covering Gaudium et Spes 19 to 20. These two are on the root of human dignity. That's what it says in the reading plan. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke on how we want to overcome death and Jesus overcomes death for us. Today, we are going to continue chapter 1, the dignity of the human person, and we're going to talk about how we need to account for atheism when we analyze the world today. It's a little longer today, so let's get straight into it. Paragraph 19 has 3 subparagraphs. A is about dignity based on communion with God, but we need to account for atheism today. B talks about the variety of things called atheism. And C talks about who is at fault for the various examples of atheism. Moving on, let's begin with 19a. The root reason for human dignity lies in man's call to communion with God. From the very circumstance of his origin, man is already invited to converse with God. For man would not exist were he not created by God's love and constantly preserved by it. And he cannot live fully according to truth unless he freely acknowledges that love and devotes himself to his Creator. Still, many of our contemporaries have never recognized this intimate and vital link with God, or have explicitly rejected it. Thus, atheism must be accounted among the serious problems of this age, and is deserving of closer examination. So this subparagraph begins by mentioning how human dignity is based in the image and likeness of God. I think we've gone over that the last few days, and this is important. We have our image, but that image also includes our ability, our capacity to commune with God. And we are our distance to God, thinking about us with His love. If God stops thinking about us, we cease to exist. It's that powerful. But unfortunately today, many don't recognize this link. And this is why we can't ignore atheism. It was one of the issues in the world in 1960, and at least in our world, in the United States, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, main countries I think they're listening to this. Atheism has dramatically increased since then. It might have reduced in former communist countries. Like I think there's less atheism probably in places like Poland now, but that's a whole other issue. So we have our 19b, which is talking about the variety of things called atheism. Let's read it. The word atheist is applied to phenomena which are quite distinct from one another. For while God is expressly denied by some, others believe that man can assert absolutely nothing about him. Still others use such a method to scrutinize the question of God, as to make it seem devoid of meaning. Many, unduly transgressing the limits of positive sciences, contend that everything can be explained by this kind of scientific reasoning alone, or by contrast, they altogether disallow that there is any absolute truth. Some laud man so extravagantly that their faith in God lapses into a kind of anemia, though they seem more inclined to affirm man than to deny God. Again, some form for themselves such fallacious ideas of God that when they repute this figment, they are by no means rejecting the God of the gospel. Some never get to the point of raising questions about God, since they seem to experience no religious stirrings, nor do they see why they should trouble themselves about religion. Moreover, atheism results not rarely from a violent protest against the evil of this world, or from the absolute character with which certain human values are unduly invested, and which thereby already accounts with them with the stature of God. Modern civilization itself often complicates the approach to God, not for any essential reason, but because it is so heavily engrossed in earthly affairs. So we can see in this subparagraph there are many different things called atheism. Some of these might be called more agnosticism in practice, things like, we don't know, we can't really say if God exists or not, and things like that. But the whole idea is these are all different ways people deny God. Some make an explicit deniability. Some think of God as unknowable. Some have false images as faith in it, and then they deny God for that. Some just unable to deal with issues like the problem of evil. And some just get so caught up in the world they never consider the question. I think modern civilization, with our extensive focus on this world, can lead to that tendency a little bit. And I think this is important to think. We have to look at these when we're looking at people and we're saying, okay, where are they open or how open are they? Because some are going to be more open than others, and that's fine. That's not bad, but we need to think about that. So moving on to 19C, fault varies for people's atheism. And this is important to note that not everyone is at fault for their atheistic beliefs. And this is important we deal with people. So let's read it. C. Undeniably, those who willfully shut out God from their hearts and try to dodge religious questions are not following the dictates of their conscience, and hence are not free of blame. Yet believers themselves frequently bear some responsibility for the situation. For, taken as a whole, atheism is not a spontaneous development but stems from a variety of causes, including a critical reaction against religious beliefs, and in some places against the Christian religion in particular. Hence, believers can have more than a little to do with the birth of atheism. To the extent they neglect their own training in the faith, or teach erroneous doctrine, or are too deficient in their religious or moral life, they must be said to conceal rather than reveal the authentic face of God and religion. I personally think this idea is important. We have to look at what kind of fault someone has, not just blame them for something they're really not at fault at, or someone else, or have limited fault for. There are those who just deny it, and that's clearly their fault. They know God exists, they know everything, and then they just deny it. Then we also have people who we are some way responsible for as Christians for their atheism. Just think of things like how we've mistreated people. There are people who have adopted an atheism or irreligious or agnostic view because of the church's sex abuse scandals. Just a reality. I think the best thing we can do with that is fix the problem now and make sure it doesn't happen in the future. I knew someone who left the church because a priest treated his mom like a jerk and was actually untruthful and extra harsh on her beyond what the church says. There's also the issue when you misrepresent the true faith. If I present the faith as a fairy tale, well, yeah, once I get older, I don't believe in fairy tales. And we need to put on ourselves to work to improve the situation so there are less people becoming atheists for this reason. Moving on to paragraph 20, it has two subparagraphs. The first one is about modern atheism focusing on human freedom. And the second one is about communism and the extra-destructive nature of it without ever using the word communism. So let's read these two subparagraphs. 20a. Modern atheism often takes on a systematic expression, which in addition to other causes, stretches the desires for human independence to such a point that it poses difficulties against any kind of dependence on God. Those who profess atheism of this sort maintain that it gives man freedom to be an end unto himself, the sole artisan and creator of his own history. They claim that this freedom cannot be reconciled with the affirmation of a Lord, who is author and purpose of all things, or at least his freedom makes such affirmation altogether superfluous. Favoring this doctrine can be the sense of power, which modern technological progress generates in man. So this subparagraph talks about how modern atheism is looking for freedom, looking for that ability to do what they want. And technology often gives it to them. Now we can have TV whenever we want. When I was a kid, you had to turn on the TV at a certain time. You had to go to the store and buy a VHS or something. Now you have an unlimited library of TV and other types of things at your fingertips. And these people, they want freedom for themselves to be far away from any restriction. And even a restriction where it might say, hey, that's not good for you. Hey, that's destructive for you. Or that self-expression is sinful. Because not everything that you can be under the guise of self-expression, quote unquote, is actually good. But Jesus does give us our true freedom. He frees us to do what is good, to do what is best. And he reminds us of what actually is destructive towards us. Moving on to our last subparagraph here, 20b, talking about communist atheism, and how it's extra destructive. B, not to be overlooked among the forms of modern atheism, is that which anticipates the liberation of man, especially through his economic and social emancipation. This form argues that, by its nature, religion thwarts this liberation by arousing man's hope for a deceptive future life, thereby diverting him from the constructing of the earthly city. Consequently, when the proponents of this doctrine gain governmental power, they vigorously fight against religion and promote atheism by using, especially in the education of the youth, those means of pressure which public power has at its disposal. You will note that I said communism, but the text never says that. That's very much, if you understand what communism is, and at least what it purports to be, that those first few sentences are very clear about that. I think it's very prudent at this time that the church should not condemn communism, at least by name. I think what would happen if they did is that a bunch of bishops in Eastern Europe would have been killed or imprisoned or things like that. It just was not that. Sometimes you have to not just say what's true, but what's prudent as well. And this is a false liberation. It does not liberate us for life eternal. It liberates us from economic destitution. It liberates us from social class. And it attacks religion because it thinks we give a false hope, but it is giving the false hope. And it seeks power, right? It gains power, and then it uses this power to corrupt the youth, to put the pressure on, to force belief in its system. And that's a big problem. This concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarQuest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we will continue on with the next paragraph of Gaudium Spes, which is paragraph 21, and that's on truth and dignity. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information on the podcast, like playlists for individual documents and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X or Twitter. Amen.